So Davina, you are the makeup and hair designer on Genius. You were the makeup and hair designer on it in season one when it was about Albert Einstein, and now you're going into season two about Pablo Picasso. Given the critical acclaim and the success of the first season, what were your expectations like for season two?
My expectations for season two was to, we wanted to go bigger. We wanted everything about the whole season to, in my words, to kind of hit it out of the ballpark again. And with, Ken Biller and I talking, the showrunner, he was under the same impression to step it up a level. And I think we did. I think we, from what I've seen so far, it's been fantastic and the reviews have been fantastic. So I think we did what we turned out to do.
So, different person this go around, Pablo Picasso, another person who is, got lots of photographs and film and newsreel footage of, and Antonio Banderas, who is, of course, also very recognizable as well. So how do you take Antonio Banderas and turn him into Pablo Picasso? What were some of the distinguishing features that you had to play upon?
Well, me and Antonio, we got on a few phone calls, and the great thing about the last two seasons is that I deal with actors that also, fully into the transformation part and want to be a part of the whole process and the whole kind of design process, which is fantastic for me. So we spoke a lot on the phone about where he was hoping to kind of change some of his looks and what I had to kind of bring to the table. And, some of his things were he wanted to kind of change his nose to be more like Picasso. Obviously, the hair had to come off. He's got, a thick, luscious head of hair, and Picasso doesn't. So, we had to get some wigs made. So it was a good amount of phone calls that we kind of had backwards and forwards. And then for my part, and what I kind of said to Antonio is that I bring everything to the table, and then we start the test run, and we just kind of mix and match exactly, what I wanted to kind of have on Picasso. And then we kind of take away stuff that, I kind of wanted Antonio to also not be completely covered in prosthetics. So I wanted him to not only look like Picasso, but kind of have an element of him in there as well, which is what we did right up until, he hit his 90s, did he start to go into, full prosthetic look.
Well, so, I mean, since there is so much footage and photographs available of Pablo Picasso, what were some of the tools that you used in terms of research?
Well, of course, Google always, plays a huge part in what I do. And I was given a whole heap of books to kind of reference on. And again, Antonio found some footage and, live footage, which was great. And some pictures that he kind of showed me. And, it was even his teeth. His teeth were something that Antonio wanted to change. And so we gave him, and Alex Rich, we both, gave him in both some dentures to wear. So it was a lot of that kind of footage. And to be honest with you, I would never, until Antonio brought it up with me that he wanted to change his teeth, it wasn't really even on my radar. So, that's what I mean by, actors, and the actors that I have been working with have been fantastic and collaborative.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious. I mean, so is there, I think we talked about this in terms of Albert Einstein and Geoffrey Rush last year, since, I mean, there is, obviously you want to make it look as accurate as possible, but is there a certain line where you have to say, I can only get it this close without making it look, I don't want to say weird or off-putting, but you know what I mean? Like going too far in trying to transform a person.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I look for. And of course, that was definitely one of the things that we look for in Einstein. We could, the trouble with Einstein is that, with his crazy wigs, you can look really comical. And so that was one of my things that I said to Antonio right off the start is that, we put everything together and then we start to peel back, or we go with what we like and don't like. And, one of his main concerns was that obviously he wanted it to be realistic and true to self, and he, you know, his reputation in Spain also, you know, coming from Malaga, and Picasso coming from Malaga, he wanted to kind of represent a fantastic Picasso, which was always in the back of his mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, so take us a bit through the day-to-day practicality of designing this makeup and using it every day. You've worked on a lot of really big movies like Lord of the Rings and Avatar and things like that. So can you talk a bit, in the case of this, how you are able to make this work every single day?
Well, for me, and not like season one. Season one, we didn't really start too much of the makeup prosthetic process until a little bit later. Well, not as heavy as what we kind of did on Picasso right off the start. And, you know, with Antonio, he had a nose on every day. And we did some calculations that he ended up with 78 prosthetic days in my chair, which is massive for a TV show like this and a fast turnaround. So for me to, you know, it's a tough kind of job to not only look after your lead character, but also run multiple departments with also multiple casts that kind of come in and out. And so there's a lot of testing to kind of do along the way. And so I try to be as much on every single element of, as I would as a designer, to, you know, pull off a big show like this. And it even comes down to, you know, the amount of wigs that we had to prep on a constant basis, which ended up being roughly between 250 and 300 wigs we had on the show. So, and the amount of prosthetics also, you know, with 17 characters all in prosthetics. So it was a lot to take on, you know, with me and my team over a, you know, 5-month span. So it's a tough kind of element to, I don't know, I always want to be true to the show and to what it is that we're, you know, trying to make, and to also try and make the characters look exactly how they're supposed to be for everybody concerned, and especially, you know, Nat Geo and you know, the history that we have, you know, the collaborative. It's fun and enjoyable.
Well, throw into that also the fact that you never shoot in continuity. So, I mean, how does that? I mean, you're basically, you got about a century almost in a man's life. So, can you talk about how shooting out of order affects your work in helping to transform this person?
Well, it's I guess I'm really lucky with the show is that they tend not to try and shoot too much out of order. Of course, we flip flop, and you know, with Alex Rich in the 1900s, and then you have Antonio, you know, starting out in the 1940s and progressing up. You know, I can pretty much keep a good timeline with the both actors, and I don't have to go backwards and forwards too much. Of course, when you get to the end of the show, you know, you have some pickups and that to do. So it's, you know, it's understandably that there will be days that you have to end up doing this, but it's hard to start off with when you have, you know, you have that first amount of actors that come in the morning and they're all in the 1900s, and, you know, beautiful, fantastic hairstyles and makeups and costume. And then, you know, the very next scene, you're making people up into the 1970s. So it takes a little bit to kind of get your head around, and the amount of, you know, pictures and reference and like I said, just wigs that we were just surrounded by to give us, to make sure that we were hitting every single period, which was really important. Although you know, although a lot of the main cast and a lot of the ladies didn't really look, with the footage that I had and the pictures that I had, they didn't really hit every kind of element of 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, what we would consider iconic looks. And so, you know, we also had to, we kind of had to put it mainly into the background and into the crowd, which were massive every day as well. So we had to make sure that we hit those time periods with them.
You mentioned Alex Rich, who was playing the younger Picasso. Talk a bit more about working with him. And also, I mean, you know, since there's only so much you can do to make him and Antonio Banderas look alike, but what are some of the ways that you made the two look as similar as you could in order for it to appear that this is the same person aging over a period of time?
So both Antonio and Alex, with the reference that I had with Picasso, Picasso started out with beautiful big lips, and he never had big eyebrows right from the start. And so when I first met Alex, he had curly hair, he had phenomenal large eyebrows, and he had these beautiful lips that Picasso had. So for me, for changing him, we had to shave off his eyebrows, which today I'm pretty sure both Antonio and Alex still probably hate me. But we had to shave off both of their eyebrows, and they did it together, which was great for the pair of them to kind of go through that and realize that not only they're playing the same character, but they both had to lose their eyebrows, and they were, in it as a team. So it was great for the both of them. And so we literally just had to straighten Alex's hair every day. He had the perfect color. So to start off with his younger look, there really wasn't much for us to kind of do on a daily basis, which was great in comparison to Antonio, who was about an hour and a half in my chair daily until we started really aging him. And then to get them closer together, we just had to slowly start putting, Alex into some aging and get him relatively close to what Antonio was at his youngest look. And that can just be, little eye bags and, reducing the lip size down. And it's just little pockets that we started to look at. And when I first took on the job, we didn't know how much the age gap was going to be until close to the time, until the scripts came out. So it's all a guessing game. And it always is with these jobs. It's a big guessing game, and you have to kind of have every element available to you so that you can jump at a moment's notice and not have to build too much or take too long.
Talk a bit more about the heavier prosthetic work that you had to do towards the end of the series. I mean, I think he lived to be about into his 90s, I believe, or somewhere around there. So can you talk a bit about turning, middle-aged Antonio Banderas into a believable nonagerian?
Yeah, we had like 4 different makeup stages for Antonio, and coming into we started out started adding a lot more prosthetics when he was 70, and so that it was a big process for Antonio as well, because he hadn't worn that much in the way of prosthetics, so it was a big learning curve for him. And he also wanted to make sure that he could move his face and not be constricted by prosthetics, which I completely agree with. I also don't like, my actors to be restricted or have, having to have those limitations put on them. And so we did a lot of testing, and so that he could feel that, the silicone that we were applying, that he would just forget about it once it was applied and on set. And that's basically what would happen. And he felt free, and he was just, when you apply prosthetic, you also want the actor to be able to work with it, and he did a great job. And so the stages that we applied were, big, cheek pieces and neck pieces and forehead, and and the hairline started to drop once he went into his bald look. And so by the time he hit his 90s, he was completely covered from like the chest up in a prosthetic. So it's 5 hours in the chair for Antonio, and it's not easy for anybody to sit in a chair for that long. And we made it playful and funny, and we'd play music, and that would get him excited, and sometimes he would sleep, so it was kind of easy.
Well, I mean, you are no stranger to heavy makeup. Like I mentioned, I mean, you've turned people into everything from hobbits to vampires and things like that. But I'm curious, I mean, when you're dealing with something like this, where you have to be a little truer to life, which is more difficult? Is it, coming up with something fantastical, or coming up with something that, I mean, there are people who look at it and say, ah, that's not quite it?
Yeah, no, it's definitely. I find it harder to make people look like a certain character, or look like they're, like the Picassos and the Einsteins, because everybody has their preconceived ideas about what they consider the Picassos and the Einsteins to look like, and so I'm trying to not only appreciate, but have everybody look at him and realize that we've tried to go in a certain angle. And that's what I mean by I don't want to make them too much look like, it's hard to put into words, but I also want the actor to be seen inside this sort of mask as well. So it's, so that we're not completely transforming them. And I think that's where, I feel like that's where the show has definitely hit its mark, is that we're not making them look too comical and out of place.
Now, you received your first Emmy nomination last year for the first season. It was one of 8 nominations that the show received overall. So what did that recognition mean for you?
It was fantastic. I think it was 10 nominations, actually.
10? 8, 10? I'm sorry. I misremembered.
I'm hoping for more this year.
Yeah.
But, the amount of work that me and my team put in to both seasons, it's kind of like the icing on the cake for us. It definitely, it pushes us into a field that every year we want to do better and knock it out of the park. So it was, it's kind of, me and my team are just overwhelmed and appreciative and thankful that everybody loved the show much as what we love to work on it. So I'm hoping season 2 will do even better.
Well, congratulations on another great season of Genius. It's great talking to you again. Thank you so much for your time.
Great talking to you too. Take care.
You too.